The myths of old. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Conclave gleamed beneath artificial starlight, a cathedral of glass and crystal suspended in orbit around the gas giant Vorschtal. Inside, representatives of 17 alien species gathered, their voices low with tension, their eyes, or equivalents, fixed on the central hollow display. Something was stirring in the darkness of space, and no one could agree on what. Archon Valax, the insectoid envoy of the Kravwin hive, tapped one of his glistening mandibles nervously. "Another colony gone silent," he rasped, voice clicking through a translator. "Third one this cycle. Entire populations vanished." "Pirates," Commander Shakvar of the Drakari Confederacy growled, his scaled fists clenched. The reptilian warrior had no patience for fear, or perhaps internal rebellion. "There is no evidence of an outside force." Lorekeeper Ellen, the frail, feathered scholar from the Aaron clans, shook her silver plumage and interjected softly, "We cannot dismiss the old legends. The disappearances match the ancient records." Shakvar let out a guttural laugh. "Legends? Are we to believe bedtime stories now?" Ellen's golden eyes did not waver. Before the last great cycle, before even the formation of this conclave, there were the vanished ones, the Terrans. The old writings speak of them. Flesh creatures from a cradle of blue oceans, violent, brilliant, relentless. A species that burned half the stars in their corner of the galaxy before they disappeared without trace. The hall stirred with discomfort. Every species present had heard the myths, humans or Terrans, as the oldest scrolls called them, were the monsters of every childhood tale. Creatures of war who had supposedly wiped themselves out in ancient times. No concrete proof of their existence remained, only scattered ruins and long-forgotten warnings carved in stone and metal. "The vanished ones are fiction," Shakvar snapped. "We have no time for superstition." Before the argument could continue, the chamber doors burst open. An emergency envoy stumbled in. One of the feline Tari species, her fur matted, her breathing labored. She collapsed on the floor as medics rushed to her side. Her voice came out in broken whispers, the rim gone. They came in black ships, silent, unmerciful, her eyes, wide with unspeakable horror, fixed on the ceiling. "It's them, the legends, the ones from the dark. They are real." Then she died. The conclave fell into stunned silence. Even Shakvar stood motionless, his scaled face tight with disbelief. The holographic map in the center of the hall flickered to life without command. Data streamed in from long-range sensors. Star systems along the galactic edge were winking out one by one, as if snuffed like candles in the void. The readings were unlike anything ever recorded. Massive energy spikes, gravitational distortions, and inescapable evidence of fleet movements at a scale no known civilization could achieve. Archon Valax's mandibles clicked anxiously. "What are we looking at?" Lorekeeper Ellen's feathers shivered. Her voice, barely audible, was filled with dread. "It matches the Lost Chronicles. The Armada of Sol. A name long buried. A name most species had forgotten or willfully erased. The Terrans, the humans, the very monsters they thought existed only in legend." The data kept flowing. Images of enormous ships, sleek, obsidian, shaped like daggers and predatory birds, began to populate the display. Some spanned kilometers in length, bristling with weaponry that seemed beyond comprehension. There were no flags, no transmissions, no symbols of peace. Only a single, stark emblem appeared burned into the hulls of the largest ships. A circle of blue and green, the old, ancient world of Earth. A shiver of fear ran through every representative in the hall. "Impossible," whispered Shakvar, his bravado crumbling. "They were extinct, weren't they?" The hollow map zoomed in on the leading edge of the Armada, black ships gliding through the void in perfect silence, their trajectories precise, deliberate, unstoppable. Planet after planet blinked red, lost, conquered, silent. Valax swallowed hard. "What do they want?" Lorekeeper Ellen did not look up from the display. Her voice was hollow. "To finish what they started. or perhaps to remind the galaxy that some nightmares never truly die. For the first time in 1,000 years, the aliens of the Conclave knew fear. The myths were real. The humans had returned. And this time, they had come in force. The first contact, the star system of Corvallis. 3 had once been a thriving trade hub, a place where ships from dozens of species bartered, refueled, and exchanged goods beneath the glow of twin suns. Now it was silent. Commander Shakvar stood aboard the ISS Vornak, flagship of the newly assembled Galactic Defense Fleet, his cold reptilian eyes fixed on the unfolding nightmare projected before him. The human armada had arrived. There were no warning shots, no transmissions, no attempts at communication. The humans advanced with terrifying precision, their black warships gliding through space like silent predators. Status report, Shakvar growled, his voice tight. Enemy fleet is maintaining formation. His second-in-command, a thin amphibian named Krell, replied. No response to hails. No deviation. They're just moving forward. Shock's scaled hand clenched into a fist. Then we stopped them. Prepared to fire. The fleet obeyed. Hundreds of ships from across the Conclave, vessels designed by different species, each bristling with the finest weapons known to galactic science, locked on to the oncoming human vessels. The order was given. Brilliant beams of plasma, torpedoes, ion cannons, all unleashed at once in a blinding storm of firepower. And yet, the human ships did not fall. Instead, a shimmering distortion rippled across the front lines of the human fleet. The alien weapons struck invisible barriers, energy shields unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The incoming projectiles disintegrated harmlessly, leaving the black ships untouched. Then came the counterattack. Without sound, without warning, dozens of Conclave warships simply ceased to exist. Thin beams of bluish light lanced out from the human vessels, each strike precisely targeting reactors, command centers, or structural weak points. There was no wasted effort, no chaos, only cold, clinical efficiency. Within minutes, a third of the Galactic Defense Fleet was gone. Panic rippled through the remaining forces. Shakvar bared his fangs in disbelief. "What kind of weapons are those?" he barked. Krell's voice trembled. "Unknown, Commander. Energy readings off the scale. We can't even identify the source. They must be centuries ahead of us." Shock's heart pounded. This wasn't a battle. This was an execution. At last, a signal came through. A single, encoded transmission originating from the largest human ship, an enormous obsidian vessel shaped like a predatory bird of prey. The message was audio only. It was a human voice. Calm, measured, chillingly precise. "This is Admiral Ilera Vance of the Soul Ascendancy," the voice said. "By edict of the Terran Preservation Directive, your worlds are forfeit. Stand down. Survival will be granted only to those who do not resist. No emotion, no negotiation, only a statement of fact." Shakvar's hands trembled. Preservation Directive? What does that even mean? Lorekeeper Ellen, watching from the distant Conclave Hall, answered through the fleet's shared comms. It was said in the old records, before the humans vanished, they vowed that should the galaxy ever attempt to harm them again, they would return, not to seek justice, but to ensure it could never happen twice. She took a breath. They call it preservation, but it is vengeance. 1,000 years in the making. As the battle unfolded, Ellen's words haunted every mind across the defense grid. The humans did not speak again. They moved without hesitation, seizing planets in swift, decisive operations. Planetary defenses were bypassed, orbital stations dismantled without effort. On the ground, automated drones, machine soldiers secured every city. Civilians were unharmed, but governments were dissolved, communication hubs seized, and every trace of resistance crushed before it could take root. There was no negotiation, no demands for territory or wealth. Only cold, methodical conquest. In the heart of the Conclave, panic turned to despair. "This is not a war we can win," Archon Valax murmured in horror. "We are fighting myths with stones and sticks." Lorekeeper Ellen's feathers trembled as she whispered, "We never imagined they would return like this." The first planets fell. The galactic news channels went dark. The Conclave's border systems were wiped clean in days. And through it all, the black ships of humanity moved onward, silent, unstoppable, inevitable. The myth was no longer a story. It was reality, the forgotten war. The halls of the Galactic Conclave were silent, stripped of their usual grandeur. The once proud representatives of the galaxy's most advanced species sat in grim circles, their faces etched with fear. The human armada had swept through 9 systems. No resistance had slowed them. No technology had matched theirs. Lorekeeper Ellen stood at the center of the chamber, her silver feathers dim under the cold glow of the overhead lights. In her talons, she held a worn, centuries-old data tablet. On its cracked screen flickered fragments of history that most of the galaxy had forgotten or chosen to forget. "I have found the truth," she began softly, her voice steady despite the weight of her discovery. The ancient myths were no mere legends. The humans were real, and the stories of their extinction were deliberate lies. The assembly murmured uneasily. Ellen continued, 10,000 cycles ago, the Terrans were not the aggressors we painted them to be. They were explorers, curious, determined, perhaps reckless. But it was the early empires of this galaxy that struck first. The Kravwin, the Drakari, the Shylin. Your ancestors feared human potential. Her eyes, golden and sorrowful, scanned the room. You feared that their rapid advancement would unseat your dominance. So you attacked. You unleashed a war meant to end them before they could rise. Valax, the insectoid archon, shivered. "That is not what our histories record." "Of course not," Ellen said gently. "The victors wrote those histories. The Terrans were betrayed on all fronts. When their worlds burned, when their people were hunted, they disappeared into the void, leaving only a single vow behind. They would remember." She gestured to the hollow display behind her. Grainy images from deep space probes showed the human ships, their impossible designs, the eerie coordination of their movements, the sheer brutality of their precision. "They survived," she whispered. "Out there, beyond the galactic rim. They evolved. They rebuilt. While we forgot them, they prepared." The words hit the assembly like a funeral bell. Commander Shakvar, now pale and silent, muttered, "We thought they were animals. Barbarians." "They were human," Ellen corrected. "That is what we never understood. They were not like us. They are something different." The images shifted, revealing captured footage from the fallen world of Vakar 7. Automated drones, humanoid but soulless, marched in silent ranks. Cities were taken with minimal damage. There were no executions, no destruction for the sake of fear. But every government was dismantled, every power structure removed. Humanity's goal was not annihilation. It was control. "They don't want our extinction," Ellen murmured. "They want to ensure no species will ever again hold the power to threaten them. This is not conquest for territory. This is a calculated survival mechanism." A new voice crackled over the chamber's calms. It was Admiral Alara Vance, the human commander, broadcasting to the entire galaxy. Her words were sharp, measured, unrelenting. "We offered peace once. We were met with fire. We departed to ensure our survival. We return now, not as conquerors, but as reminders. There will be no war if none is raised against us. Cease hostilities. Dismantle offensive capabilities. Obey the Soul Ascendancy's mandates, and life will continue. Resist, and extinction will follow. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Silence followed. Across the chamber, despair thickened. "We cannot win," whispered Valax. "We cannot even fight them." Shakvar, still shaken but burning with stubborn pride, stood. "We must try. There must be something, some weakness." But Ellen shook her head. "The only weakness is their memory, the pain we caused them. And now, after thousands of cycles, they have returned to ensure they are never victims again." She looked to the stars beyond the glass walls of the chamber, where the black ships of the Terrans loomed closer each hour. "We made them myths," she whispered, "but we created this nightmare with our own hands. We forgot, and they never did." The galaxy stood on the edge of extinction. not because of greed or hatred, but because of ancient wounds carved too deep to heal. And humanity, the species once dismissed as a fleeting spark, had become the fire that would decide the fate of the stars. The day of reckoning. The sky above Verdant Expanse blazed with artificial suns. The combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance, thousands of ships from every known species, hovered in defensive formation, the last desperate line between the human armada and the core worlds. Every gun was primed. Every shield was raised. But even from orbit, they could see it, the endless procession of black ships, the silent Terran fleet stretching beyond the horizon of sensors. Commander HFY stood rigid on the command deck of the ISS Vornak, his cold reptilian heart thudding heavily. This was not a battle. It was an extinction event in slow motion. Final readiness check. HFY barked, though he already knew the truth. The assembled forces were no match for what was coming. On the main screen, the Terran flagship, the monstrous vessel known as the TSV Abyss, came into view. Its surface was smooth obsidian, its hull adorned with nothing but the ancient insignia of Earth, a faded blue and green circle, the memory of a world most in this galaxy barely believed that existed. Then the transmission came. Once more, the voice of Admiral Alara Vance, calm, unyielding. This is your final opportunity. Lay down your arms. Dismantle your fleets. Stand down. Continued resistance will be interpreted as consent to eradication. The fleet commanders of the Alliance hesitated. Pride, fear, anger, all warred within them. HFY's claws dug into the command console. If we surrender, we lose everything, he growled. But if we fight, we die. From the back of the bridge, a quiet voice answered. Lorekeeper Ellen, who had joined the crew in these final hours, her silver feathers still, her eyes sad. Perhaps it is not about winning, she said softly. Perhaps it is about whether we deserve survival. HFY stared at her, his mind turning. The humans weren't killing indiscriminately. Every action they'd taken had been precise, calculated. Not cruelty, but cold logic. Ellen's words echoed the uncomfortable truth. This was not conquest. It was punishment, or perhaps correction. The human ships moved. The first strikes came swiftly, clean beams of annihilation cutting through the outer ranks of the Alliance fleet. Dozens of ships vanished in streaks of fire and debris. Explosions lit up the void. Yet the humans advanced with the same cold discipline, no emotion, no urgency, just inevitability. Return fire. HFY roared. The Alliance fleet responded with everything it had. Plasma cannons, fusion missiles, antimatter torpedoes. The void between the armadas became a storm of energy. But once again, human technology reigned supreme. Shields shimmered, attacks deflected harmlessly, and then came precise counterattacks, targeted, surgical, devastating. Within minutes, the Alliance was crumbling. In the conclave far behind the battlefront, the remaining leaders watched the slaughter in helpless silence. Archon Valak shivered. This is hopeless. They will not stop. And then, without warning, the human armada halted. Every ship, every drone, every weapon froze in perfect synchronization. A new signal flashed across every screen, not just in the battle, but across every communication network in the galaxy. Admiral Alara Vance appeared, her face calm, her expression unreadable. We have made our point, she said quietly. This is not annihilation. This is memory. Lay down your weapons. We will not ask again. The galaxy must change, or be reshaped. The meaning was clear. The humans could wipe them out. In minutes, the entire Alliance, the Conclave, every world from rim to core could burn. But they had chosen not to yet. The choice remained. HFY, bloodied and breathless, stared at the frozen battlefield. His ship, half crippled, floated in the debris. His claws trembled. For the first time in his life, he knew what true defeat felt like. Stand down, he whispered. The order rippled through the surviving fleet. Weapons powered down. Engines cooled. Across the galaxy, others followed. The war was over, not because the galaxy had won, but because it had been spared. In the aftermath, the Sole Ascendancy, as the humans now called themselves, issued their demands. All aggressive fleets dismantled. All biological weapons destroyed. A permanent galactic neutrality enforced by humanity's silent observation. No worlds were taken. No civilians were harmed. The humans simply left. Their black ships vanished into the dark once more, leaving only silence and the chilling knowledge that they were watching. Always, in the years that followed, the galaxy would rebuild, but the myths would never fade again. Humanity, forgotten once, had returned not as legends, but as gods of war, and no one would ever forget them again.